We return to see our heroes on their way to Fuchsia City. Our trio pass through Gringy City, but as Pikachu isn't around to gut them faint and suggests they stop at the Pokémon Center, there isn't really anything keeping them there. The day is still young, so they're able to continue onwards without getting involved in the power plant mishap. It allows them to keep traveling, but unfortunately means that Ash does not catch Muck. They travel through the mountains and end up getting into a little predicament with some Diglett. They find out that Diglett and Dugtrio are preventing the building of a dam, and so Ash, along with many other trainers, try to catch the Diglett. Things don't really go well as the Diglett just avoid the Pokeballs being thrown at them. As if to add salt into the wound, the Diglett bring the Pokeballs back to the trainers as well. Ash is about to send out Krabby, but Seda has a better idea. She sends out Kadabra, figuring the Psychic type can communicate with the Diglett, and maybe solve things peacefully. Kadabra speaks with them, and it turns out that the Diglett have been cultivating the terrain for years, and the completion of the dam would end up flooding the mountain range, ruining the homes of the Pokemon living there. This is something the foreman laments, and ultimately decides that they'll cancel the dam project for the sake of the Pokemon living there. The three get back on the road and soon are able to see Fuchsia City appear in the distance. Despite seemingly having a clear path, the trio ends up getting lost in the forest. Being unable to figure out where they need to go, they decide to take a bit of a break. As Brock tends to Vulpix's fur, while simultaneously trying to keep Psyduck from making his headache worse, and Seda cares for her three Pokemon, Ash brings out his full team in order to get some battle practice in. He has Charmander and Krabby battle each other, while Absol watches in order to get her more familiarized with Ash's training style. Charmander and Krabby clash, with Charmander putting in a surprising amount of effort compared to how he normally would. Charmander releases a powerful flamethrower, which sends Krabby flying into a completely oblivious Caterpie. Seda is just barely unable to get Caterpie out of the way, causing the two Pokemon to collide with each other. The moment the two hit the ground, the two are enveloped in a surprising glow. Ash and Seda stare in amazement. The two Pokemon evolve simultaneously into Kingler and Metapod. Both trainers congratulate their Pokemon on the evolutions, with Ash mentioning how Kingler must be even stronger than before. As if to prove Ash right, Kingler shows off a brand new Razor Shell attack, which he uses to cut cleanly through a nearby tree. This newfound power is amazing not only to Ash, but it also impresses Machamp and Gyarados. Charmander is the only one who isn't happy to see this exponential growth in Kingler though, as the lizard looks clearly annoyed by how much Kingler had grown after this singular battle. As if to add salt to the wound, Ash decides to have Charmander take a break, having Gyarados take over as Kingler's opponent. As Ash focuses on Kingler and Gyarados, continuing to praise the two for how powerful they are, Charmander begins to feel a mix of annoyance and anxiety. This mix continues to bubble up inside him until eventually, Charmander runs from the group. With everyone focused on other things, no one seems to notice Charmander running off. No one except for Machamp, that is. Machamp looks over to Ash, but notices his trainer is fully engrossed in Gyarados and Kingler's training. Rather than interrupting, Machamp chooses to go after Charmander by himself. Charmander wanders through the woodlands, not realizing that Machamp is following close behind. When a wild Pokemon appears, Charmander attempts to pick a fight with them, but they just run away instead. Charmander kicks the ground, frustrated that he can't even train on his own. It's then that he notices something purple sticking out of a bush. Thinking it to be part of a Pokemon, Charmander decides the best course of action is to strike it with a flamethrower. Once the purple thing is burnt, it disappears behind the bush. At first, Charmander thinks he's lost out on the fight once again, only for the brush to begin to rustle like crazy. Charmander gets ready for a fight, only to soon realize that he's picked it with the wrong creature, as an Arbok leaps from the bush. Charmander immediately freezes, only for Machamp to leap in the way of the assailant. Just before Machamp can attack the incoming serpent, a voice calls out for his Golbat to use Wing Attack. In a swift, singular strike, the Arbok is taken down. A blue and red Pokeball with 4-pointed blades is then thrown, capturing the Serpentine Pokemon. Machamp and Charmander both seem confused, but are soon met with a masked man dressed in purple. He appears in a puff of smoke, taking up the ball that was used to capture Arbok. After allowing Golbat to perch on his arm, the man notices the two Pokemon. Calmly, yet with a stern undertone, the man asks if the two are lost. Back with Ash and company, Gyarados and Kingler are locked in a fierce sparring match. With Krabby having evolved, the Crab is actually acting as more of a rival to who was once Ash's strongest team member. Both become far stronger facing each other than ever before, with Gyarados' bite attack becoming a crunch, and Kingler being able to use its razor-sharp shell in more ways. Kingler charged in for another attack, when Gyarados unleashes a powerful Tempest from its jaws, which blows the King Crab away. Confused, Ash looks at his Pokédex to find that this move is known as Hurricane, and is a powerful flying-type attack. Ash is amazed with this revelation and is very happy to see how Gyarados is still improving, even now. He then thinks that maybe Gyarados and Kingler's newfound power could be helpful to his other Pokemon, and so turns to tell Absol and Charmander it's time for them to train. It's at this moment that Ash comes to the realization of Charmander being nowhere to be seen. Not only that, but Machamp is gone too. Unsure of where the two could have gone to, Ash chooses to drop everything in order to find him. Ash, Seda, and Brock look everywhere they can, with Brock having chosen to bring out Zubat in order to cover more ground. It takes hours for them to find anything even remotely helpful, but when they finally do, it's from locating an old-fashioned mansion in the woods. They entered, calling out to anyone who might be home, only for there to be no answers at all. This worries Ash, as he is beginning to think that he may have lost Machamp after only getting him back recently. He also worries about whether or not Charmander is alright, as Charmander might think he lost yet another trainer. Suddenly, a throwing star comes flying in, striking a wall near Seda. From out of nowhere, a woman in a ninja outfit appears. This woman is a warrior by the name of Aya, who has a Venonat as her partner. Thinking these three are intruders, she prepares her Venonat to handle them. Venonat charges in to attack with Tackle, but Ash brings out Absol, who cuts Venonat down with a single, beautiful air slash. This stuns them, while also bringing about the attention of a man in similar attire to her. He asks what the meaning of all of this is, only to learn the group simply wanting to know if there had been a Machamp or Charmander seen in the area. The man nods, revealing how he had found them wandering near the grounds hours ago, and they are currently training there. The group is surprised by this, wondering what kind of training could be done in a place like this. It's then they learn the mansion is actually not only a living space, but is in fact a martial arts dojo, and the Fuchsia City Gym. The man introduces himself as the acting gym leader, Koga. Koga leads them to a back room. in which they find Machamp meditating alongside many people in similar robes to that of Koga and Aya. Aya explains to them how the mansion is a well-known location for training in the ways of ninjutsu, an art of stealth and deception in order to defend oneself. Many will come from all over the globe to learn the ways of her brother's teachings. Ash calls out to Machamp, only to get no response. Koga smiles, clapping Ash's shoulder before explaining how Machamp is focused right now. He has found that meditation and finding inner peace allows one to unlock their inner strength, which is what Machamp is working on. Ash is amazed, but then asks where Charmander is. Reluctantly, Koga mentions how Charmander was found to not be one for sitting still. Aya opens a doorway, showing a battlefield, where a young girl with purple hair is commanding a spider Pokémon in battle, with her opponent being none other than Charmander. Koga explains how Charmander seemed to be rashly picking fights out in the woods, and wasn't interested in anything other than physical training upon arrival. So, he allowed the lizard to face his daughter, Janine, in order to expel this pent-up aggression. The girl and Charmander stop battling, turning to greet everyone who had just entered. Ash is relieved to see his fire-type lizard, but the lizard doesn't go to his trainer upon being reunited. Ash doesn't fully recognize the animosity that the lizard now has towards him, but does still do what is best, and apologizes to the fire lizard for not realizing he had gone off on his own. He was so focused on Gyarados and Kingler, when he needed to pay attention to the starter as well. While these words were probably the right thing to say, the damage has already been done. Charmander does accept these words, but it's not enough to fully resolve this conflict. Still, it seems to Ash like this is enough. At least for now. Ash does get Charmander's attention by asking the Fire Lizard if he wanted to battle alongside him in the gym battle. Koga decides to accept Ash's challenge, bringing everyone outside in order to give the battle a more interesting setting. Aya asks as the battle's referee, and states that this gym battle will be a 3-on-3, and will only be over when either side's Pokemon are fully defeated. Only the challenger will be able to swap Pokemon freely, to which both trainers are fine with. So with nothing else needing to be said, the battle is able to begin. Ash starts with Charmander while Koga sends out his newly captured Arbok. It's mentioned by Janine that normally the gym battle would be a 2-on-2, but with this newest member to Koga's team, he probably wanted to see how it would fare against an actual challenge. This intrigues Seda, as it makes her feel that Koga's really just using Ash's challenge as a way to test himself. To which Brock states that gym challengers aren't the only one who can learn from their battles. Ash calls for a flamethrower, but before the attack is fired, Arbok is gone, disappearing beneath a cloud of thick, black smoke. Confused, Ash tells Charmander to stay on guard, but this is only responded to with a small spark of flame from Charmander. Not heeding Ash's warnings results in Arbok striking with a sludge bomb, before burrowing underground. Ash tries to focus on the battle and figuring out where Arbok might resurface from. He calls for Charmander to dodge to the right, but the Fire Lizard dodges to the left, getting hit with the super effective strike. Ash doesn't understand it. Why isn't Charmander listening to him? Arbok continues to damage Charmander with consistent powerful attacks. At this point, Charmander is just lashing out and ignoring everything Ash commands. Eventually, Ash decides to try calling Charmander back, but the fire type avoids the beam before roaring at Ash. Ash snaps back, asking what's gotten into Charmander. This is responded to by Charmander spitting a flamethrower at his trainer, before getting back into the fight. Charmander rushes in and strikes with a far more powerful form of the usual scratch attack, finally managing to get a hit in on Arbok. Then when Arbok tries to get away to dig, Charmander knocks it back with a flamethrower, before trapping it inside of a fire spin. Charmander is about to attack again, but when he dashes into the fire spin, he finds no sight of Arbok. The serpent reappears, striking from below with Dig, before burying its fangs into Charmander with a crunch. Spitting Charmander back out, Arbok sways from side to side, as if to taunt Charmander. This makes the little lizard angry. It rushes in to attack again, but this time Koga takes out a ball. In a flash of red light, Arbok is called back. Koga then states that this battle is finished. Ash is confused. The battle had only begun. Why would Koga already call it quits? With somewhat wishful thinking, Ash asks if Koga is forfeiting, to which the ninja laughs. He then states that Ash and Charmander have potential, but from the looks of it, that potential is being wasted. Either Ash needs to rein in his lizard, or Koga will not accept a challenge from him again. With that, Koga disappears. The group is left unable to understand what just happened. Just like that, Koga wasn't going to allow the battle to continue at all? Aya sighs, forestating that's how her brothers always worked. He hated seeing a trainer and Pokemon waste their potential. It was something left over from his own training days. Though Janine does make the bold statement that her father is wasting his own potential. This surprises everyone, since it's coming from someone not much older than Ash or Seda. Aya tells her niece to be respectful of her father, but the young girl simply retorts that she says it all the time. Her father could be much stronger than he currently lets himself to be. This stuns our main trio into an awkward silence. None of the three were expecting to be caught in the middle of a family issue. The tension begins to grow thicker, until Aya owns up to it and apologizes. She explains how they ninja, while they fight in underhanded ways, still have a code of honor now. Brock states that he thought the way of the ninja was that they were supposed to complete their mission by any means necessary. Aya nods, before noting that Brock was formerly a gym leader, something he confirms. She tilts her head slightly, before asking him what a ninja is supposed to do when his mission is to be a positive influence and teacher. Ash resolves himself to get everything figured out. Unlike in canon, he's been able to get through to Pokemon before. It did take time with Gyarados and Absol, but he still had been able to reach both of them. So, he was determined to get through to Charmander. Ash tries to approach the fire lizard, but it just burns him with a flamethrower. This only confuses Ash, as he thought attempting to approach Charmander would help. Anytime he'd been able to touch Gyarados or Absol, that was enough to allow him to understand them. However, if Charmander wasn't going to allow him to get closer, then he would need to figure something else out. Aya suggests that maybe Charmander's skill level had exceeded Ash's, hence why Charmander had started ignoring him. But Brock disagrees. Most of Charmander's battle experience came from being on the road with Ash, and the two were training together. If anything, Ash and Charmander had been growing together until today. Out of all of Ash's Pokemon, Machamp was the one getting the most battle experience, and yet Machamp still listened. Ash also disagrees with the idea, as Charmander didn't stop listening to him until after disappearing during training today. That lone thought allows it to click in Ash's mind. Was it something to do with the training? he did switch out Charmander for Gyarados since Kingler had just evolved. He didn't even think to ask Charmander if it would be alright with tagging out. Maybe Charmander was mad at him because of that? But he just apologized. Was that really enough to make Charmander completely against him even getting close? Ash decides to give it another try, telling Charmander that it's time the two of them got to work. Charmander gives him a confused look, which Ash responds to by saying Charmander wants to get strong, right? Well, the two of them can get stronger together. Charmander seems to consider this for a moment, but ultimately their starter rejects the idea. Ash tries to apologize for taking Charmander out of training without considering his feelings, but the fire lizard just isn't hearing it. Ash then has another idea. Taking out a Pokeball, he brings out Gyarados. The sea serpent lashes its tail violently, causing Charmander to tense up a bit. Ash then tells Charmander that if he doesn't want to work alongside him, then he'll let him fight against Gyarados in order to get out some frustration. Once again, Charmander refuses this time, even laying down on the wooden flooring and turning away from his trainer. Ash sighs, figuring that Charmander's stubbornness wasn't going to be solved immediately. Maybe the fire lizard just wanted some space for a while. So he sends out Kingler and Absol, having his entire team out of their balls now. He tells them to go enjoy themselves for a while. Some of Ash's Pokemon give him a look, as if to ask if he's joining them, but Ash tells them to go have fun. He'll stay here in case Charmander has a change of heart. As Ash's Pokemon head off on their own, Ash asks Brock to keep an eye on them, just to make sure they'll be alright as well. Brock agrees to, making a comment that his Pokemon could use the relaxation time as well, before he leaves the room. Seda asks Ash if he's going to be okay, to which Ash nods, before taking a seat on the floor. He states that he's going to wait in here, until Charmander is ready. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Seda mentions how Ash thought Charmander wanted to be given some space, to which Ash says he's still giving that to the lizard. However, he's still not going to leave Charmander. He won't bother Charmander at all, but he's still going to stay in the room to show Charmander that he won't just abandon him. He won't make the same mistake Damien did. Seda smiles, before taking her leave as well. Aya and Janine also leave, making the only two left in the room, Ash and Charmander. What Ash didn't notice was that the mention of abandonment in Damien did get to Charmander. The eyes of the fire lizard softened slightly, becoming those less of anger and more of a pained expression. In that moment, Charmander almost turns over to Ash, but the lizard stops himself. Seconds become minutes, and minutes slowly grow into hours. Throughout that entire time, Ash and Charmander do not move from their spots. While it is a bit difficult for the 10-year-old trainer to sit still, he does so for the sake of his Pokemon, to show that he's not going to just give up and leave. As time passes, eventually Machamp returns, taking a seat by Ash. Neither say anything to each other. Machamp just sits down and waits alongside his trainer. Minutes later, Absol approaches, taking a seat beside Ash as well. Then Gyarados manages to slither his way over to the group, and stays beside them. Finally, Kingler joins the group in waiting, for Charmander. Charmander lays there, lost in thought. Statements of Charmander being weak and disobedient echo through Charmander's mind in the voice of Damien. This voice of Damien berates Charmander for being so weak, and how it would be pointless to train a weak Charmander. He's reminded of how Damien replaced him with the Poliwhirl which beat him in battle. Ash had replaced him too. Sure, it was during training, but how much longer would it be before Ash abandoned him, just like Damien did? Ash has so many other strong Pokemon by his side. Charmander had only been in one gym battle, and he failed to win it for his trainer. Machamp had disappeared and rejoined Ash's team multiple times, but that didn't mean Ash would want such a weak Pokemon by his side. But then, Ash did find him. Yes, Machamp was with him, but Ash said he would be in the room, waiting for him. Was he even still here? Or did Ash just leave so quietly the little lizard would think he would stay there? Charmander felt like he'd be stupid to fall for another trick like the one done to him before. Charmander glances back. But he isn't alone in the room. Not only is his trainer still there, but everyone on Ash's team was as well. Every member of the team had come back to wait with Ash. No one had abandoned him this time. But why? Charmander wasn't strong. He wanted to become stronger. More than anything, he wanted to have the kind of strength that would mean no one would leave him again. But he wasn't strong enough yet. So then why hadn't they left him yet? It's then that Charmander realizes everything. He remembers back when he first met Ash and Machamp. They took him to that strange place where he was treated. He had been on his own for so long after Damien left. These ones came by and helped him? Yes, they had actually helped him. Even before they knew everything about his abandonment. Charmander couldn't understand it. But this human hadn't been treating him like Damien did at all. He hadn't been abandoned by him even once. Maybe he was wrong about why his current trainer replaced him with Gyarados during the training. It all felt different now. Still somewhat cautiously, Charmander gets up, turning around to face Ash and the other Pokémon. Slowly, the lizard begins to approach them. Then, that slow approach grew faster, before breaking into a sprint. The sprint is short-lasting, however, as much as Charmander's surprise, Ash runs over to him as well, meeting the lizard halfway. Charmander leaps into Ash's arms, being wrapped into a warm and powerful embrace. Ash holds Charmander close, and even apologizes again. This time, the apology is fully accepted by the lizard, who then looks up to notice that the two are not alone. Machamp, Gyarados, Kingler, and Absol have all gathered around as well. The hug between trainer and Pokemon was now a massive group hug, which included every single member of the team. And Charmander couldn't be happier. Eventually, the group disperses, and Ash immediately gets to training. With Charmander now by his side again, he knows for certain that he wants to win with Charmander. So he begins training. Given Arbok's serpentine appearance, Ash decides to use Gyarados to train his Pokemon and be ready for the fight. With Gyarados being the second strongest member currently, it makes the sparring match tough for Ash's other Pokemon. Even with Kingler's newfound power, and Charmander's new sense of vigor for fighting alongside Ash, Gyarados is still a difficult opponent to defeat. Still, Ash leads them with purpose, and commands his Pokemon to not hold back. They need to give it everything they've got. Lurking in the shadow of the gyms, the gym leader of Fuchsia City listens in. Ash's commands remind him of the days gone by. Those words were the same ones he used as a boy when commanding his own Pokemon, but Ash said them differently. Koga's commands were like orders given to a soldier. They were filled with malice. Ash's commands, however, felt encouraging, pushing the Pokemon forward in a way that made it seem as though Ash were fighting right by their sides. A small smile formed on Koga's face. He couldn't help but think about how this was an interesting and unique style of battle. Unlike the style of power and winning by any means necessary he has learned in his youth. He begins to look forward to this challenge of rematch. Ash and his partners worked hard into the night. When Ash's other Pokemon got tired and needed a break, Charmander kept going, having switched from fighting Gyarados to now fighting Machamp. Machamp was strong, much stronger than Gyarados. His blows were fierce, and his physical prowess was unmatched by any of Ash's other teammates. Still, Charmander put everything into the fight. Even when Charmander would be taken down by a bullet punch or a vital throw, Charmander would get back up, much to the joy of Machamp. The two worked hard together, with Charmander being even more determined around Machamp than any other member of Ash's team. Ash couldn't be prouder of either, as he pushed both of them to their limits, encouraging them the entire time, until all three lost the ability to continue. When Ash awoke, he found himself resting in a cot on the floor. Aya, Janine, Seda, and Brock all standing by in the hopes that he'd wake up. With relief that he's finally awake after having passed out for hours, they do state that he has not now got a rematch to prepare for, meaning that he can't lay in bed all day. A smile creeps across Ash's wide-eyed face, as he realizes what that means. Immediately, he leaps from his bed, before rushing through the building complex until he is back at the battlefield. However, Koga is not there. Aya is the one to tell Ash that with Koga learning of Ash's efforts, the gym leader wanted this gym battle to be special. So they were using a more versatile battlefield. With that, Ash and his friends are led to the outside courtyard, where Koga finally appears. Koga commends Ash for being a responsible trainer and taking the time to better himself and his Pokemon before daring to issue a challenge to him again. Ash just mentioned how Koga didn't give him much of a choice, since he was the one who stopped their original battle and wouldn't allow Ash to fight until things were sorted. But Koga notes how he never told Ash to train afterwards. He merely wanted a proper challenge, and a disobedient Charmander would not give that to him. It was Ash who took those extra steps of his own volition. Because of that, Koga has deemed Ash as a worthy adversary, hence why they will be battling outside, where they will be able to use their Pokemon to their full capabilities. Once again, the battle will be a 3-on-3, but unlike Ash's other gym battles, Koga states that both of them will be able to make substitutions at will, something which Ian notes is a typical battle rule for competitions like the Indigo League Conference, meaning Koga isn't holding back this time. Koga asks if Ash is willing to accept these rules, which Ash states that he wouldn't possibly back down from a challenge like this. Koga smirks, before asking whether Ash's decision shows the trainer's bravery or naivety. Though, that will be determined by the battle's end. The gym battle begins with Koga sending out his Golbat to face Ash's Charmander. At first, Ash is surprised to not see Arbok retaking the field, but when he calls for a flamethrower, he soon finds out why Golbat was chosen as the lead. The bat is a swift flyer, and is able to dodge the attack before hitting Charmander with a Toxin, which begins to slowly eat away at Charmander's energy and stamina. He then forces Charmander out with a Whirlwind, causing Kingler to be brought onto the field. Koga attempts to go for Toxic once more, but Kingler is able to avoid the attempted poisoning with the use of Dig. While it is able to help defensively, it would be unable to attack a Pokemon that is so high in the air. Not to mention how, if Kingler were to resurface, he runs the risk of being poisoned or forced out by Whirlwind. Still, Ash chooses to run the risk regardless, calling for Kingler to resurface and attack with a Razor Shell. The King Crab rips through the ground, before attempting to land a blow with Razor Shell. Unfortunately for the Crab, Koga switches out Golbat just in time, bringing in a Venomoth instead. This shocks his daughter as he recalls Venomoth only being a Venonat, to which Aya supposes that Ash wasn't the only one who had spent their time training lately. Just when Kingler is about to land a powerful Razor Shell, Koga calls for Sleep Powder, which forces the pincer Pokemon into a deep slumber. Venomoth is then called back, as Arbok takes the field to strike with a Gunk Shot. Kingler is sent reeling back, but is unable to do anything due to still being comatose. This leaves the Crab unable to react as Arbok begins a relentless onslaught, which results in the King Crab's defeat. Ash wasn't even able to do a thing against Koga. Both trainers call back their Pokemon, with Ash already down a Pokemon, and that one being one of his stronger members now. Things were not looking good. He still had options, so the group was beginning to wonder which direction he would go. Would he use his strongest Pokemon, relying on Machamp's Guts ability, or would he be relying on Gyarados? Much to the group's surprise, the Pokemon which is sent out next is Absol. Janine doesn't understand why Ash would make this choice, as the others have made it clear that he has better options available to him. Saida mentions that Ash tries to use his newer Pokemon more often when he can, but that does make it sound like he's relying on beginner's luck. Absol's opponent ends up being Golbat, who once again goes for Toxin. This time, however, Ash reveals a hidden move up his sleeve. Detect. Absol's eyes glow, before the disaster Pokemon dodges out of the way of the poison with ease. Absol then follows up with Air Slash, which actually manages to strike the bat and knock it out of the air. Ash then calls Charmander back, before bringing out Charmander. Koga and Ash simultaneously command for Whirlwind and Fire Spin, which cancel each other out, before Koga makes another switch in Pokemon. Arbok is back on the field and goes for Dig in order to confuse Ash and Charmander on where to expect the attack from next. Everyone thinks Koga has put Ash into a difficult position, but that's when Ash makes the call for Charmander to jump up and use a flamethrower attack on the ground. The burst of flame launches Charmander into the air, making Arbok unable to reach Charmander when the Serpent finally springs out of the ground. Ash then calls for Fire Spin, in order to trap Arbok from escaping. Koga is about to call for Dig to escape the swirling vortex of flame, but Charmander comes flying back down to the ground with a powerful slash attack. Arbok attempts to counterattack with Crunch, chomping down on the arm of the fire lizard, causing it to yelp in pain. However, at the command of Ash, Charmander slammed Arbok against the ground in an attempt to shake off the snake. When that didn't work, Charmander attacked with Flamethrower, which burned the snake to a crisp. Finally, Arbok releases Charmander's arm. By this point, the fire lizard was beginning to look worse for wear. The damage Arbok had been doing, combined with the toxic poisoning, was leaving Charmander exhausted and sapped of all energy. So Ash has no other choice but to switch it to Absol, assuring Charmander that they would still win together. As soon as Absol appears, the disaster Pokemon strikes with Air Slash, whipping up winds which cut through Arbok until it is left unable to move. With one powerful Night Slash from Absol, Arbok finally collapses from the injuries it had obtained. This stuns Koga and his family. Even with Arbok being the most recent of Koga's team members, Ash managing to take it out was still a major feat. Not only that, but I had noticed her brother had a smile beginning to creep across his face. Venomoth returns to the battlefield, going for Sleep Powder in the process. But Absol is able to use Detect to avoid, before counterattacking with another Air Slash. Koga commands swiftly for Venomoth to use Quiver Dance. The bug's body glows white as it begins to dance around, avoiding the Air Slashes with such speed that each time an after image remains, originally making Ash and Absol believe the attack had landed. Koga then commands for Bug Buzz to be used. Venomoth appears from behind Absol, just as Ash attempts to call for the use of Detect. Venomoth fires off a buzz with red waves from its wings. Absol cringes in pain as she tries to remain standing against the powerful noise of the insect. Ash attempts to have Absol counter with Air Slash, but she isn't even able to hear her trainer over the bug buzz. When the move dies down, Koga switches to Golbat and strikes with a wing attack. This blow sends Absol flying backwards, but luckily, the Dark type is able to recover. Golbat goes for Toxic, but Absol is able to avoid with Detect, before countering with Water Pulse. Unfortunately for Ash and Absol, Golbat is just barely able to avoid and strike with another wing attack. It goes for another blow, but Absol is prepared this time, using Detect to avoid the move before going for Water Pulse once again. However, as Ash commands it, rather than Absol firing a jet of water from her mouth, she creates a large vortex around herself, forcing Golbat away. Ash pumps a fist, as he wasn't sure that would actually work. He remembered seeing Absol use Water Pulse this way when the champ was fighting Gary's Primate, but wasn't sure this strategy would help now. However, with being successful, Ash was able to have Absol follow up with Air Slash, forcing some distance between the two combatants. Absol is about to go for another attack, but Koga catches her off guard with a command of Whirlwind from Golbat. The bat just barely manages to force Absol out, meaning Charmander is brought back onto the battlefield, allowing Koga to begin slowly chipping away at the lizard with Wing Attack and the toxic damage racking up. Ash has to think quickly, but luckily a more recent strategy is something he can use again. As Golbat gets close, Ash's Charmander uses Fire Spin around himself. This tactic surprises the small prey, but it does manage to work. The flames whip around Charmander, forming a barrier of fire that Golbat is caught within. The bat is able to escape, and Koga is able to work around it by using Whirlwind to blow the flames away. But Ash is prepared for this, and has Charmander use Flamethrower. However, Koga calls for Protect, completely nullifying the damage. The two choose to switch once again, with Venomoth and Absol returning to the battlefield. Ash was hoping to utilize Absol to defeat Golbat. With Koga predicting this decision, he would have to work around it. With a Call of Night Slash, Absol's blade-like horn begins to glow with dark energy, before it dashes towards Venomoth. Koga smirks, calling for a sleep powder. Ash was able to quickly react, though, calling for Detect in order to avoid. Absol leaps back with glowing red eyes, only to be met with a Sludge Bomb from Venomoth. Not able to use Detect again, Ash instead had Absol cut through with Air Slash. An explosion shakes the battlefield with the attacks clashing, giving Koga the advantage as Venomoth got behind Absol before she could even react. With a blast of Bug Buzz, Absol was sent slamming into a nearby wall. Ash calls for his disaster Pokemon, asking if she was okay. Slowly, Absol gets back to her feet, before giving her trainer a nod. Ash smiles, before calling for Water Pulse. Once again, Absol fires off a jet of water, only for another Bug Buzz to be made. However, rather than the high-frequency attack, the sound instead reverberates as the Water Pulse lands. At least, it looked like it did. However, like before, Venomoth was not actually there. Koga commends Ash's work, as he's clearly drawn out this battle with his own abilities. However, while he's tried to make some surprising strategies, no one was better at being unpredictable than him. With that, Venomoth reappears, blasting Absol away with another Bug Buzz. Venomoth keeps up the pressure, blasting Absol with even more Bug Buzzes. Ash tries to call out to Absol, but she still can't hear him over the attack. With that, Absol collapses, leaving Ash stunned and silent. His two Pokemon down, even after all the work he had put in. Even though he trusted Absol to pull through, Koga's ruthlessness was too great for him. Still, he had one last Pokemon whom he could count on. After all, he promised that the two of them would win together. Charmander is brought out, and Ash tells him about the situation, stating that he is the only one left. This seems to strike a chord with the Fire Lizard, as his tail flame begins to grow brighter, though Ash does not notice it. Charmander turns around to face Venomoth. The tail flame begins to grow brighter and brighter, until Charmander unleashes a flamethrower that is far more powerful than the trainer and gym leader were expecting. Venomoth is just barely able to dodge, but it's clear that even in his exhaustion, Charmander wasn't going to back down. Charmander rushes in, leaping up with a slash attack that Venomoth still only barely avoids. Charmander keeps it up. He's far more aggressive this time, though the difference here is he's listening to Ash. Charmander slashes over and over again at Venomoth, keeping the bug on its toes. Then, when Venomoth finally thinks it's gotten the upper hand and can strike, Charmander counters with a Fire Spin, ensnaring the bug within it. Then, with a final slash attack, Charmander defeats Venomoth. This leaves Golbat as the only competitor. And needless to say, the two battlers are fierce. They clash over and over again, with Golbat mixing in the use of Protect with his usual wing attack assaults. Meanwhile, Charmander tries to fight back with Slash. Charmander fires off a flamethrower, chasing Golbat as it flies. The group watching are amazed. Zeta and Brock haven't seen Charmander battle this intense before. Zeta is worried that the aggression is too much, but Brock says that it's working in Charmander's favor. The anger is driving Charmander currently, and it might be what the lizard needs in order to get stronger. On the other end of things, Janine is mesmerized by her father's battle. She knew he was considered a top competitor and gym leader in the past, but this was unlike anything she'd even seen Koga do. His battling made her want to battle and become just as strong as him. Aya notices this and smiles. This was what she had been wanting to see from the brother. A mix of his old self, while still being able to inspire the trainers who sought out his teachings. As Pokemon clash, Koga begins to feel different. This heat of battle, this rush he was getting, to truly go all out in this fight. He didn't think a challenger like the one standing before him would be the one to push him like this, and yet here he was. It had been so long since his mission had allowed him to feel as though he didn't need to hold back. But this battle reminded him of the trainer he once was. The trainer who the league wanted as gym leader in the first place. He and Golbat, his strongest partner, were going to give it everything they had. As the two fought with ferocious power, more of Koga's students began to join the crowd. Each one marveled at their master being pushed to use every ounce of his power in a fight. It was unreal just how powerful Koga was. And yet somehow, Ash and Charmander had the drive to stay in the fight. The two trainers roared that they won't give in to each other. Both Pokemon dash in. Suddenly, light bursts from both of them. As they clash once again, they were not Golbat and Charmander, but to the astonishment of the crowd, Crobat and Charmeleon. Charmeleon holds back the wing attack, his tail flame growing as Charmeleon gives off a look of rage. In that moment, Ash and Charmeleon seem to come to a similar idea, taking inspiration from Machamp. At Ash's command, Charmeleon clamps down on Crobat's wings, and with all of his strength, he leaps into the air. Then, using the last of his strength, he flips by using Crobat's weight to his advantage, before finally throwing Crobat to the ground and finishing things with a slash. There's a moment of silence, with Ash not even sure he had actually won. Once the cheers erupt from those around him, Charmeleon lets out a flame-spitting roar, before succumbing to the toxic poison. Ash rushes to Charmeleon's side, catching him just before he hits the ground. He thanks Charmeleon for all his hard work, stating that this was his toughest battle by far, and might not have been able to win without him. Koga silences his cheering students, stating that they bring him his herbal supplies. The ninja disciples nod before dashing away. Moments later, they return with a handful of what Koga calls revival herbs, as well as some assorted berries. Using a grindstone, Koga mashes them into a paste, which he proceeds to feed to Charmeleon as a noble gesture to the Pokemon who bested him. Soon, Charmeleon is back on his feet, looking stronger than ever. Ash thanks Charmeleon again, only for Charmeleon to spit out a flame in Ash's direction. At first, the others believe that this means Charmeleon is back to hating Ash, but Koga states that it seems more likely that the evolution makes Charmeleon more aggressive, something the two will have to get used to. Ash smiles, saying that's alright. After all, he already knows someone who can help with that. Gyarados pops out, with Ash telling his lizard and serpent that they're gonna need to do a bit more training before they hit the road. Happily, the two follow him as he leads them to a good spot for training. Time passes and Ash finishes his training. Charmeleon's higher levels of aggression haven't completely been brought under control, but Gyarados has been helpful in the endeavor. As Ash returns to his friends, Aya approaches them with an offer to stay there for the night, seeing as it was getting late. The three agree, and so join those at Koga's home for a dinner, where they all talk about their adventures so far. When Aya asks what they'll be doing next, Seda mentions how they were planning to meet Officer Jenny of Fuchsia City. This catches Koga's attention, as he mentions Officer Jenny guards part of the land outside the Safari Zone. He actually looks over the land of the Safari Zone, so has become well acquainted with Jenny. He offers to take them over to her, much to the enthusiasm of Seda. Once they finish their meal, the group heads to bed, Janine having been ordered to prepare some rooms for the trio. They settle in and are able to get a good night's rest until the morning. They then join Koga, Aya, and Janine out front. Koga tells them that the walk isn't too long of one, and that he'll return to the gym once he's gotten them to Officer Jenny. However, with that being said, Aya actually says she's been thinking about it, and it would be best for Koga to go on a journey. Koga tells her that this isn't necessary. His role is to be a gym leader and to teach students. But Aya states that the gym and students will be fine while he's gone. While Janine was wanting to take over the gym, she isn't qualified to do so just yet. However, Aya will be able to take care of it until she's ready. Koga tries to protest this, but Aya tells him that his battle with Ash was the happiest she'd seen Koga in a long time. If he stays here forever, then he likely won't be pushed like that again. If he were to travel, then he could see stronger opponents and test himself against them. Maybe even find new skills he can bring back to his students. If he were to stay here forever, he would merely remain stagnant, and that would just mean he'd be wasting his own potential. Koga opens his mouth to speak, but he then notices more of his students approaching. They agree with Aya and Janine. They want to see Koga return to the competitive battling scene, and fight like he used to. Nothing will happen to them if he were to go on a journey, so he could not only be like his old self again, but also become stronger. Fighting Ash already allowed his strongest Pokemon to become even better by evolving into Crobat. So if he were to face more trainers like Ash, then imagine how much further he could go. While Koga still feels as though it would be best for him to stay, with everyone cheering him on to go on a training journey, how could he refuse? Even Janine tells him that she knows he could become strong enough to rival the Elite Four. So he makes his final decision. He exclaims that in that case, he'll go on a journey, just like they wish him to. He'll aim for the top and become not only an elite trainer, but the new champion of the Kanto region. Brock does note that as a gym leader, Koga could challenge the champion directly, but Koga states that he'd rather do things the old-fashioned way. Travel and face in other gyms, like Ash is doing. Ash asks if that means the two of them are rivals, to which Koga states that it would depend on whether Ash is able to make it to the league or not. Ash smiles, swearing that he will, but he'll have to wait for his next badge. For now, the group must continue on, with Koga leading the way. Their next stop is the Safari Land Reserve, in order for Seda to meet Officer Jenny watching over it. And that's where we'll be leaving things for right now. So what do you guys think? How do you feel about this version of Ash vs. Koga? Do you like the way Charmander was handled in this part? What about Koga's characterization? Are you going to miss Ash's muck? Let me know down in the comments below. Get this video to 151 likes, and I'll get to work on the next one as soon as I can. Anyways, I will see you all in the next one. Bye!